Hi, I'm Kieren.
And I'm Riku.
Welcome to Artificially Ever After
Short Stuff. So, Kieren, we're going to talk about DeepSeek. What's all the fuss about?
Okay, so you might say we're a little bit late to the party. You may or may not have heard, but it was pretty widespread, this news about this Chinese AI startup called DeepSeek, which I think it's safe to say it sent shockwaves through the world outside of just the AI world and the AI bubble. We're going to talk about some of the effects it had on the world economy. But it had a massive rise in global attention a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to really quickly cover what happened, why it happened, and what it might mean for the future. So Riku, what is DeepSeek?
So an AI research lab from a prominent Chinese hedge fund from 2023, where the founders Liang Wenfeng were focusing on developing cost-effective AI models. And the reason why they had to worry about this cost-effectiveness is because the US started sanctioning the latest NVIDIA chips, the H100s, from entering China. So these are the latest chips that are used, the hardware for training big AI models. So it meant that the Chinese AI tech developers, they had to work around this computational lack of resources. So they released their latest AI assistant, DeepSeek R1, which surpassed ChatGPT, which is the free AI chatbot from the West. So there's a bit of a narrative between the East versus West's best AI models.
And importantly, it was catching up and very, very close in some of the benchmarks to OpenAI's top performing model, wasn't it, at the time? So that is one of the crucial things. But we're going to quickly cover the global impacts and the kind of reactions and why it caused so much fuss. But as Riku was just mentioning, so it was the most recent announcement and release of their R1 model, which is a kind of reasoning chatbot that you can ask it to do stuff, and it can reason about these complex tasks and give you very, very kind of complex responses. But in actual fact, a lot of the key scientific and research breakthroughs which have led to these shockwaves were kind of released and discussed with this earlier model V3, which came out over Christmas. And some of them even were announced when they released their research paper in January 2024. So we kind of had hints of DeepSeek and that it was doing some stuff and it was coming onto the radar, but it wasn't until people actually started trying out this R1 model that they saw how good it was. And we're going to get into why it caused the shockwaves that it did, but just to kind of emphasize how substantial and significant this release was, NVIDIA, which is the chip manufacturing tech company from America, which makes all of the hardware which people use to train AI, who their prices and their value has been absolutely skyrocketing in recent years due to the boom in AI. Their stock plummeted nearly 18%, which erased approximately $600 billion of value of NVIDIA, which is enormous in a single day. And the following day, and again, this is some of the stuff we'll be discussing shortly, their shares rebounded by 9%, so that kind of hints that it was maybe a little bit of an overreaction. But I think this shows more broadly just how big AI is becoming and how much of an impact it's having on the world economy these days, that drop in NVIDIA actually, and some other tech stocks as well caused this, but it caused the NASDAQ 100, which is a big stock index, to decline by around 3%, and the S&P 500 fell by approximately 2%, which is just huge. So what is all the fuss about? Like, what has caused these shockwaves and why are people panicking so much?
So the first thing to say is that what DeepSeek would have sent a shockwave regardless of where it was from. But because of this kind of West versus East, the AI arms race or the AI Cold War, it was an even bigger deal. So the idea is that China's caught up. So as we said before, this R1 model is matching ChatGPT, which is the free thing that everyone's using in the West. So that was the first shockwave.
That China is not as maybe far behind as the narrative in the West was maybe alluding to.
Exactly, yeah. And the second thing is that they did it with such a fraction of the cost. So just to put a number on that difference, it's not been disclosed exactly, but GPT-4, so the model that we're comparing DeepSeek V3 to, cost over $100 million to train, whereas DeepSeek V3, that can do just as well, was only $5 million to train.
That's a big difference. And we can, I mean, I know we do demystifying on this show, and we can really quickly cover the kind of two high-level ways that they're significantly different. But the key thing is that they actually made, in DeepSeek, they made kind of significant breakthroughs in the underlying technology and the way they're building the AI, which made it so much cheaper to run. And one, which is this really clever way that they essentially use lots of different smaller models to answer your question. You know, when you go and type a question into that chatbot, it doesn't just load up this one enormous model in one go and then it costs a load of money and memory to kind of run this model. It fires it off to the kind of relevant smaller model that might be an expert in kind of law, or one might be an expert in biology or science. So this
kind
is
of like modules in the brain in a way.
Yeah, it's called mixture of experts. And this is being done by companies in the West. But there was a kind of a key way in which DeepSeek did it slightly differently, which meant it was way cheaper. And the other thing that they did, which, just do a little self-plug here, but if we go back to our episode when we were talking about running out of data, one of the things which Riku and I discussed as a way to potentially let AI improve on its own is you use a technique called reinforcement learning, whereby the AI can kind of reason and rank its own responses and tell it which one was the best and improve itself, rather than what OpenAI kind of pioneered, which was reinforcement learning with human feedback, which, as the name implies, doesn't use an AI to teach the AI. It uses real humans who, I think sadly, as we've seen, a lot of those instances were paid very little money for the amount of hours they put in. But this was the key difference, was that they used this new method of using reinforcement learning. So these are the two ways that they made it better. And what that resulted in is much cheaper cost to train, as Riku was saying, but also a lot cheaper for the end user to actually use those models. So the way that you calculate this is per million tokens, which is kind of, as we've discussed previously, kind of analogous to the number of words that it is generating, but per million output tokens / words. For DeepSeek, that is $2.19 per million output tokens, and for OpenAI, that is $60 per output tokens. So yeah, just way cheaper to actually run and for users to use those models.
Wow. And then I guess the fourth thing, which is the icing on the cake, is that they open source. So with, despite the name OpenAI, none of their models are open source, which means that your average Joe or general member public, you can't just download the model onto a computer. You have to go through their website or pay for their API. Whereas DeepSeek, you can download on your computer. In fact, they have these different grades of models. So you can actually download an 8 gigabyte version. So I think most of our phones have like 256 or above. So
crazy.
Might see DeepSeek on our phones.
And I think the main reason, because there have been a lot of questions around why they would do that, I think the main reason is that it's to attract talent and just really show that, they do have the technology. They want to kind of spread the word that this is real, that it's, it's innovation, and they want people to come and work over in China for companies like DeepSeek. But along with its release have come some privacy concerns as well. So really quickly, just to reel off a couple. So they had some cyber attacks after its release of the R1 chatbot, which they described as this very large-scale malicious attack, and they actually limited new signups to use the model. And this attack led to the exposure of databases containing sensitive information about the users, secret keys, so like how you actually connect to the chatbot, chat logs as well, which is quite concerning. So the actual messages people have been sending back and forth were leaked as well. And in addition to that, some other criticisms have been around censoring of its output. So we know, as we've discussed previously, that these models are inherently biased, and that all of these kind of chatbots from the West, so ChatGPT, Gemini, they will inherently respond in a way that's biased towards Western values that are represented on the internet. But DeepSeek was kind of subject to direct censoring on top of those biases in its output. So I saw some examples where people were asking it about content that was critical of China or its politics. So people were asking about Tiananmen Square or the Uyghur Muslims, and these responses were just directly cut off, and it said it wasn't able to respond. So this is one thing that's kind of making us think about this technology and where it's come from.
So actually, on that point about data privacy, it's kind of ironic what's ended up happening, but DeepSeek's kind of got exposed. So if you ask it, what AI are you? A lot of the time it replies saying, I'm OpenAI's model,
Yeah.
ChatGPT. And that really threw people off. It was like, why is China's AI saying it's America's AI? And it turns out what they did, or at least there's a lot of speculation, is that the company of DeepSeek basically asked loads of questions of ChatGPT to copy its responses.
Yeah.
And that is a big reason why they managed to achieve similar performance for a fraction of the price, is because it's so much easier to copy the outputs of an AI model than to learn its outputs from scratch.
Yeah.
And ironically, OpenAI are filing copyright and like data protection lawsuits and things, which is ironic because ChatGPT and all the LLMs essentially are massively trained on copyrighted data.
Yeah.
So that is throwing a bit of a spanner in the works. So I guess we're going to talk about the future now. But is it as big a deal as it sounds like? Is it gonna, has it changed the world forever? What do you think, Kieren?
Yeah, so I mean, in the long run, what this means is that it's cheaper to run these AIs and these models, which will be a good thing for big tech, and it will make the kind of use of this technology cheaper. I don't think it's necessarily a significant step forward in terms of AI capabilities or the overall field. It just means that the kind of capabilities that we can currently achieve, we can actually just do those for way cheaper. And there's an example which I've seen coming up a lot, people mentioning on Twitter and things, of this something called Javon's paradox, which is a historical observation, came about when coal engines became much, much more efficient, which is that counter to what you'd expect, which is that if you need less coal to produce the same amount of energy, you actually end up using way more coal in the long run because it's cheaper to run those engines. They make them more efficient. So I think in the long run, this will only mean that more people will be able to run AI, use AI.
Yeah, I mean, on your phone now.
On your phone, exactly. Edge inference, which is what that's called. So just some kind of indications for what this might mean for other big tech companies we just wanted to include, which is that it's fantastic for Microsoft because they are currently partnered with OpenAI and they use OpenAI's tech and ChatGPT within their softwares. But all they really care about is running the AI for cheaper. So this is great because it brings the cost of that down.
Is that because Microsoft can learn from the open source methodology? Or?
Yeah, that hopefully it just means that generally now there'll be a shift towards these models being cheaper to run and that everyone will benefit from the technology of DeepSeek and make their own models more efficient. And Amazon and AWS, like cloud computing, will have a huge increase in share prices probably because more people will be able to use these models themselves now and run them on cloud hosting platforms. Apple as well, like you just mentioned. So these tech companies that are building hardware, Apple have the best hardware for running AI on your phone and your laptop, so locally, so they'll do really well out of this. Meta is arguably the biggest winner because every aspect of their kind of business model today is centered around AI and using AI for the end result. They don't necessarily care about developing the AI and making better capabilities, they just want to run it for cheaper. One other one is Google, and for them it's probably not great because they were trying to kind of do their own technology and make things better, and any of this stuff getting cheaper with making AI more efficient and better means that it's a competitor to their search algorithm, which is their kind of central product. And last but not least, so if any of you have got NVIDIA stock and are concerned about that, I think in the long term be absolutely fine. This is not financial advice, any of this, by the way. It's just our speculation as AI researchers, but they have a few advantages that will keep them ahead of the game for I think years to come, and this will probably just be good for them in the long run because they will get more people buying their products.
Yeah, I guess it hasn't invalidated how useful GPUs can be. So,
exactly. It's
back to that.
Opposite, yeah.
Is it Javon's paradox?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Nice. Cool. So that's what all the fuss is about. We hope we covered it all. Yeah, please message in if you have any thoughts and comments, feedback. But if not,
we'll catch you next time.